The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Zexthul of the Vorthan Empire clutched his ceremonial staff with 3 of his 4 arms, his scaled hide shifting from deep purple to alarmed yellow. The holographic displays floating above the central platform showed tactical readouts that made even the most experienced military minds present feel sick to their stomachs. "The preliminary reports cannot be accurate," declared High Chancellor Mordak, her crystalline voice resonating through the vast chamber. The ethereal leader's translucent form flickered with anxiety patterns that her species had not displayed in over 3 millennia. A single species cannot possess this level of technological advancement while remaining undetected. Fleet Admiral Kethvar of the Dominion Navy stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the polished floor. His people, the Gorvani, had been the undisputed masters of warfare for 800 years. Their ships had conquered 17 star systems and brought order to the chaotic Outer Rim territories. Yet now, this battle-hardened warrior's mandibles clicked nervously as he accessed the data streams. "The evidence is undeniable," Kethvar rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty mixed with barely concealed fear. 3 days ago, our long-range sensor arrays detected what appeared to be a minor border skirmish in the Sol system. We assumed it was another conflict between the local primitive inhabitants that occasionally managed to achieve basic space travel. The Admiral activated the central hologram, and suddenly the chamber was filled with a 3-dimensional representation of space, near the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Tiny dots of light moved in precise formations, while larger signatures pulsed ominously in the background. "What we witnessed was not a primitive skirmish," Kethvar continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "The inhabitants of this world, who call themselves humans, were conducting what their transmissions indicated was a training exercise. Our xenobiological analysis suggests these creatures evolved from persistence hunters on their homeworld, developing pack tactics and endurance capabilities that exceed anything in our databases." Ambassador Zexthul's color shifted to deep crimson, a sign of extreme distress among his people. "Show them the combat footage, Admiral. The Council needs to understand what we are truly facing." The hologram shifted, zooming in on individual vessels. What the assembled representatives saw defied their understanding of military doctrine. Human ships moved with a fluidity that suggested their crews operated on pure instinct, rather than calculated strategy. When their weapons fired, the energy signatures registered off the scales of conventional measurement devices. "Their smallest fighters," Kethvar explained, highlighting a formation of sleek vessels barely larger than atmospheric aircraft, generated energy outputs equivalent to our heavy cruiser-class ships. Each pilot appeared to be operating independently, while maintaining perfect coordination with their squad mates. "Our behavioral analysts suggest this indicates a level of individual initiative and tactical flexibility unknown in our military structures." The chamber fell silent as the implications began to sink in. For generations, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through a careful balance of military might and diplomatic pressure. The strongest fleets belonged to species that had evolved from hive minds or strict hierarchical societies, where orders flowed from central command structures down through rigid chains of authority. Chancellor Mordak materialized, closer to the hologram, her ethereal form pulsing with urgent questions. "What force strength did our sensors detect during this training exercise?" Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a nervous habit he had developed during the most stressful battles of his career. Initial estimates suggested approximately 200 vessels of various classes. However, our deep space reconnaissance drones have since provided additional intelligence that changes everything. The hologram expanded outward, showing the entire Sol system. Suddenly, what had appeared to be empty space began filling with contact signatures. Ships emerged from behind planets, from asteroid fields, from positions that should have been impossible to hide in. The display became crowded with thousands upon thousands of vessel indicators. The training exercise involved less than 1% of their total military capability, Kethvar announced, his voice barely audible over the gasps and alarmed chittering from the assembled representatives. "Our best estimates suggest the humans possess a fleet numbering in the hundreds of thousands of ships. More disturbing is the fact that this appears to be only their local system defense force." Representative Kulash of the Merchant Guild, whose species had trading contacts throughout the galaxy, activated her communication device with trembling appendages. Have we attempted diplomatic contact? Perhaps these humans can be reasoned with, offered membership in our trade networks. The Admiral's massive head swayed in what might have been interpreted as a negative gesture by species familiar with Gorvani body language. Our xenosociology teams have been analyzing their cultural transmissions for the past 72 hours. The humans appear to be a species that has spent their entire evolutionary history in a state of constant warfare, not only with other members of their species but with their environment itself. The holographic display shifted again, showing images captured from human information networks. The assembled council members watched in horrified fascination as the humans engaged in activities that would be considered extreme sports on any civilized world, but which appeared to be routine entertainment for these creatures. They willingly throw themselves from great heights while attached to fabric wings, observed Ambassador Zexthul, his color cycling through confused patterns. They engage in combat sports for recreation, and their historical records indicate they have never experienced a period lasting more than a few decades without engaging in major military conflicts with each other. Chancellor, Mordek's form flickered with what her species expressed as deep contemplation. If this is their behavior toward members of their own species, what can we expect should they turn their attention to the wider galaxy? Admiral Kethvar accessed another data stream, and the chamber's environmental systems adjusted to accommodate the influx of nervous pheromones being released by representatives of various species. Our psychological warfare specialists have identified patterns in human military doctrine that suggest they view conflict not as a last resort, but as a natural state of existence. They appear to prepare for battles that may never come, developing contingency plans for scenarios that most species would consider impossibly unlikely. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through carefully managed displays of overwhelming force. When a species stepped out of line, a show of military might usually brought them back into compliance. The idea that somewhere in the galaxy existed a species that might view such displays as interesting challenges rather than deterrents was beyond their comprehension. Recommendation? Chancellor Mordek asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected what the Admiral's response would be. Quarantine, Admiral Kethavar replied immediately. We establish a perimeter around their system and monitor their development. Under no circumstances do we make direct contact until we understand them better. And we pray to whatever deities each of our species reveres that they remain focused on their internal conflicts and never look outward toward the stars. 3 months after the Council's decision to establish a quarantine perimeter around the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar stood in the command center of the Galactic Defense Station Omega-7, the most advanced monitoring facility in the fleet. The massive structure hung in space at the edge of human territory, bristling with sensor arrays and communication equipment that represented the pinnacle of galactic technology. What those sensors were reporting, however, challenged everything the Admiral thought he knew about space warfare. Sir, you need to see this immediately, called out Senior Sensor Operator Veltar, her usual professional composure cracking as she manipulated the holographic displays. The young Zalonian's bioluminescent patches flickered in patterns that indicated extreme stress, something Kethavar had rarely seen in her species outside of life-threatening situations. The Admiral moved to the primary observation deck, his heavy footsteps echoing through the command center's sudden silence. Every member of the multinational crew had stopped their routine activities to stare at the central display, where new contact signatures were appearing at an alarming rate. Report, Kethavar commanded, though part of him was beginning to suspect he would not like what he was about to hear. Veltar's voice wavered as she began her briefing. 18 hours ago, our deep space monitoring arrays detected what appeared to be routine military exercises in the outer regions of the Sol system. Standard protocol suggested we observe and catalog the activities for our intelligence database. The holographic display zoomed in on the human star system, revealing formations of ships moving in complex patterns around the orbital paths of the outer planets. At first glance, it appeared to be the same type of training exercise they had observed months earlier. But as the display enhanced its resolution, the true scope of the activity became apparent. The exercise involves approximately 50,000 human vessels, Veltar continued, her bioluminescent patches now cycling through rapid warning patterns. Ship classes range from single pilot fighters to massive constructs that our analysis suggests are mobile battle stations larger than some of our permanent installations. Admiral Kethvar felt his mandibles begin their nervous clicking as he processed the implications. The Galactic Defense Force's largest fleet exercises involved fewer than 10,000 ships, and those required months of planning and coordination between multiple species and command structures. Analysis of their tactical movements? The Admiral asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would be equally disturbing. Chief Tactical Analyst Morquan, a veteran of 17 major fleet engagements, stepped forward with data tablets clutched in all 4 of his appendages. His usually steady voice carried an undertone of barely controlled panic. Sir, their tactical doctrine appears to be based on principles we do not understand. Our military academies teach fleet coordination through rigid hierarchical command structures and predetermined battle plans. The humans seem to operate on entirely different principles. The display shifted to show individual squadron movements within the larger fleet exercise. What the assembled observers saw defied their military training and experience. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic at first glance, but which revealed hidden complexity upon closer examination. Each squadron operates with complete independence, Morquan explained, highlighting different formation groups. Yet somehow they maintain perfect coordination with the larger fleet. When one group encounters simulated resistance, adjacent squadrons immediately adapt their positions and tactics without any detectable communication delays. Veltar manipulated the display to show communication intercepts from the human exercise. Our xenolinguistics teams have been monitoring their transmissions throughout the exercise. What we discovered is perhaps more disturbing than their tactical capabilities. The intercepts played through the command center's audio systems, translated into standard galactic languages. What the crew heard were brief, clipped exchanges between ship commanders that conveyed massive amounts of tactical information in impossibly short communications. Alpha 7, bandits bearing 2 Mark 5 engaging. Copy Alpha 7. Bravo Squadron adjusting vector for support run. Charlie Leader. Enemy reinforcements detected grid 7-7. Recommend flanking maneuver. Roger Charlie, Delta Squadron moving to intercept. Foxtrot providing cover. Admiral Kethvar listened to the exchanges with growing alarm. In his experience, coordinating fleet movements required detailed orders, confirmation protocols, and careful planning. The humans appeared to be conducting complex multi-squadron tactical operations, with communications that would barely suffice for ordering supplies in most civilized military organizations. Their reaction times, Morquan continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, suggest they process tactical information and implement responses faster than our computer systems can calculate optimal strategies. When their exercise controllers introduced unexpected variables, human commanders adapted immediately without consulting higher authority or requesting clarification. The implication sent a chill through the command center that had nothing to do with environmental controls. Every species in the Galactic Council had developed military doctrines based on careful planning, detailed analysis, and structured command hierarchies. The idea that a species might conduct warfare through intuition and split-second decision-making was alien to their understanding. Show them the resource analysis, Veltar said quietly, her bioluminescent patches now displaying the deep blue patterns associated with profound dread. The holographic display shifted to show logistical data compiled during the exercise. Numbers and statistics floated in the air around the ship formations, each figure more alarming than the last. Fuel consumption rates, ammunition expenditure, maintenance requirements, and crew rotation schedules painted a picture that challenged fundamental assumptions about military logistics. The exercise lasted 47 hours, Morquan reported, consulting his data tablets with trembling appendages. During that time, the human fleet consumed resources at rates that would normally sustain our largest military operations for several months. Yet their supply chains showed no signs of strain or depletion. Admiral Kethvar studied the figures with the eye of a military professional who had spent decades managing fleet logistics. What he saw suggested either impossibly efficient resource management or production capabilities that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Estimated industrial capacity? He asked, though he suspected the answer would be as disturbing as everything else about these creatures. Based on observed consumption rates and the apparent ease with which they sustained this level of activity, Veltar replied, our analysts estimate their military-industrial complex operates at approximately 100 times the capacity of our largest member species. This assessment is conservative and may significantly underestimate their true capabilities. The command center fell silent as the assembled officers contemplated what they had learned. The humans were not simply a powerful military force. They represented an entirely different approach to warfare that operated on scales and principles beyond galactic comprehension. Sir, called out Communications Officer Zetevak from his station near the command platform. We are receiving priority transmissions from Galactic Council headquarters. They are requesting immediate updates on human military capabilities. Admiral Kethavar considered the request for several long moments. How could he explain to the Council that their quarantine strategy might be fundamentally flawed? How could he convey that the humans might not be contained by conventional military deterrence, because they appeared to operate according to different rules entirely? Prepare a full tactical briefing, he finally ordered. Include all sensor data, analysis reports, and recommendations. And add a personal note from me to Chancellor Mordak. What should the note say, sir? Sevak asked. Admiral Kethavar looked once more at the holographic display showing 50,000 human ships conducting exercises with the casual efficiency of a routine training mission. Tell her that we may need to reconsider our definition of what constitutes an acceptable threat level, and suggest that perhaps our ancestors' legends about warrior species from the galaxy's edge were not myths after all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council's Inner Circle convened in the highest security chamber on Nexus Prime, deep beneath the planet's crystalline surface. Only the 7 most powerful species in the galaxy were represented, their leaders gathering in person rather than through holographic projection for the first time in over 2 centuries. The gravity of the situation was evident in every gesture, every nervous energy pattern, and every subconscious defense mechanism being displayed by beings who normally radiated absolute confidence. Supreme Commander Theknol of the Hegemony military forces stood before the assembled leaders, his biomechanical enhancements gleaming under the chamber's adaptive lighting. His species had evolved alongside technology, integrating machinery into their biology until the line between organic and artificial intelligence became meaningless. Even with his enhanced cognitive processing capabilities, the data he was about to present challenged his ability to comprehend. The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections, Theknol announced, his synthetic voice carrying harmonics that indicated extreme stress even through technological filters. 6 days ago, our monitoring stations detected what we initially classified as another human military exercise. We were wrong. The central holographic system activated, displaying the Sol system in 3-dimensional detail. What appeared in the chamber made several of the assembled leaders involuntarily activate their species' emergency physiological responses. Counselor Vetra of the Synthetic Collective actually powered down several of her non-essential systems to conserve energy for critical analysis. What our sensors detected was not an exercise, Theknol continued, manipulating the display to show movement patterns throughout the human star system. It was a mobilization. The humans have activated what appears to be their full military reserves and are conducting systematic preparations for large-scale deployment. The hologram zoomed in on individual sectors of space around Earth, revealing activity levels that defied conventional understanding of logistics and organization. Ships moved in formations that numbered in the hundreds of thousands, while massive industrial platforms worked at a pace that suggested they were operating under emergency protocols. High Arbiter Quelthane of the Judicial Consortium, whose species had evolved advanced pattern recognition capabilities over millions of years, studied the display with growing alarm. Analysis of their deployment patterns suggests they are preparing for operations outside their home system. The formation structures indicate long-range capability with sustained operational parameters. Sovereign Drakmor of the Trade Federation activated his species' emotional suppression protocols, but his voice still carried undertones of panic. Our economic intelligence networks have been monitoring human resource consumption for the past week. They are producing war materials at rates that exceed the combined industrial output of our 12 largest manufacturing systems. The implications struck the chamber like a physical blow. The Trade Federation controlled the economic networks that supplied the entire galactic community with everything from basic materials to advanced technology. If the humans could outproduce their entire civilization, the balance of power was shifting in ways that rendered traditional diplomatic and military pressure meaningless. "Show them the technological analysis," Supreme Commander Theknol said, his biomechanical systems cycling through processing modes that indicated he was struggling to maintain operational stability. The holographic display shifted to show detailed scans of human ships and equipment. What the assembled leaders saw challenged their understanding of technological development and scientific advancement. Human vessels incorporated design principles that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics, while their weapon systems generated energy signatures that registered beyond the limits of standard measurement equipment. "Their technology appears to be based on principles we do not recognize," Theknol explained, highlighting various ship components that defied analysis. "Our best xenotechnology specialists estimate their advancement level at approximately 2,000 years beyond our current capabilities. More disturbing is the fact that they appear to have developed this technology through independent research rather than building upon the accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization." Counselor Vetra's mechanical voice resonated through the chamber with digital distortion, patterns that indicated severe cognitive strain. "Independent technological development on this scale suggests intellectual capabilities that operate according to different parameters than our standardized intelligence metrics. They may think in ways we cannot predict or counter." The chamber's environmental systems worked overtime to process the stress pheromones and energy signatures being generated by the assembled leaders. Each species had evolved different responses to existential threats, but the current situation was triggering fear responses that had not been active for millennia. "Military assessment?" High Arbiter Quelthane asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer would be devastating. Supreme Commander Theknol accessed files that carried the highest classification levels in galactic intelligence networks. "Conservative estimates suggest the human military could defeat our combined forces with less than 10% of their total capability. Optimistic projections give us a 30% chance of survival if they decide to expand beyond their current territory." The silence that followed was broken only by the environmental systems struggling to maintain atmospheric stability in the face of the biochemical chaos being generated by 7 species simultaneously experiencing existential terror. "What triggered this mobilization?" Sovereign Drakmor asked, his normally precise economic calculations reduced to desperate hope that there might be some factor they could influence or control. "Unknown," Theknol admitted, displaying communication intercepts that showed human military transmissions filled with terms and concepts that resisted translation. "Our xenolinguistics teams have identified references to external threats and defensive preparations, but the context suggests they may be responding to perceived dangers that we cannot detect." High Arbiter Quelthane's pattern recognition capabilities suddenly activated emergency protocols. If they perceive threats that our sensor networks cannot identify, their technological superiority may be even greater than we estimated. They could be monitoring phenomena beyond our detection capabilities. The implication sent a new wave of terror through the chamber. If the humans were responding to threats that the galactic community could not even perceive, it suggested they operated on awareness levels that rendered traditional military and diplomatic strategies completely inadequate. "Recommendations?" Counselor Vetra asked, her mechanical systems cycling through millions of probability calculations in search of scenarios that did not end in galactic catastrophe. Supreme Commander Theknol's biomechanical enhancements dimmed as he diverted power to his core processing systems. "We have 3 options. First, we attempt to establish diplomatic contact and hope they view us as potential allies rather than obstacles. Second, we mobilize our complete military forces and attempt to contain them before they fully deploy. Third, we evacuate the core systems and hope they ignore us." Assessment of success probability for each option? High Arbiter Quelthane demanded. "Diplomacy. Unknown variables make calculation impossible. Military containment. Less than 5% chance of success with 100% probability of our total destruction. Evacuation. Might delay contact but cannot prevent it if they choose to pursue us." The assembled leaders contemplated choices that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Outside the secure chamber, 47 species continued their daily lives, unaware that their future might depend on the decisions of creatures they had never met, operating according to principles they could not understand. There is a fourth option, Sovereign Drakmor said quietly, his economic analysis systems producing results that horrified even his pessimistic projections. We could attempt to understand them before they notice us, study their culture, their motivations, their intentions, perhaps learn what they consider threats worthy of such massive mobilization. Supreme Commander Theknol's mechanical systems hummed with probability calculations. That option requires we maintain our current monitoring position while hoping they do not detect our surveillance. Given their apparent technological superiority, that hope may be unfounded. Then we pray, High Arbiter Quelthane said simply, that whatever they are preparing to fight is not us. Deep within the monitoring station Omega-7, Chief Xenobiologist Dr. Rindal worked frantically in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing human cultural transmissions, behavioral patterns, and social structures. Her species, the empathic observers, had evolved the ability to understand other life forms through careful analysis of emotional and social patterns. For the past 2 weeks, she had been attempting to decode the psychological motivations behind human military mobilization, and what she had discovered was keeping her awake through multiple sleep cycles. Admiral Kethvar to the Xenobiology lab immediately, the station's communication system announced, interrupting her analysis of human recreational activities that seemed to involve deliberately placing themselves in mortal danger for entertainment purposes. When the Admiral arrived, he found Dr. Rindal surrounded by data streams that made his military mind struggle to process the sheer volume of information. Cultural analysis charts, psychological profiles, historical data reconstructions, and behavioral predictions filled every available display surface in the laboratory. Report. Doctor, Kethvar commanded, though his tone suggested he was preparing himself for more disturbing news. Dr. Rindal's empathic organs flickered with patterns that indicated she was experiencing severe emotional distress from prolonged exposure to human psychological patterns. Admiral, I believe I have determined why the humans are mobilizing their military forces, and the answer is far more terrifying than any scenario we have previously considered. The central holographic display activated, showing a complex analysis of human communication networks, news broadcasts, and social media interactions. What appeared were charts and graphs tracking human emotional responses, stress levels, and collective psychological states over the past several months. The humans are not mobilizing in response to external threats they have detected, Dr. Rindal announced, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty mixed with profound horror. They are mobilizing because their military leaders have determined that they have been at peace for too long. Admiral Kethvar's mandibles froze in mid-click as he processed this information. Explain. Human psychology operates on principles that are fundamentally different from every known species in the galaxy. Dr. Rindal continued, manipulating the display to show comparative analysis charts. Most intelligent life forms develop civilization by learning to suppress aggressive instincts and channel competitive drives into productive activities. Humans appear to have developed civilization while maintaining and enhancing their aggressive capabilities. The display shifted to show human military academies, training facilities, and educational institutions. What the analysis revealed was a society that treated warfare not as an unfortunate necessity, but as an advanced science worthy of continuous study and improvement. They have universities dedicated entirely to the study of warfare, Dr. Rindal explained, highlighting institutions like West Point, Sandhurst, and dozens of similar facilities around the globe. These are not emergency training centers activated during conflicts. They are permanent institutions that operate continuously, preparing future military leaders even when no conflicts exist. Admiral Kethvar studied the data with growing amazement. In galactic civilization, military academies were typically established in response to specific threats and disbanded when those threats were resolved. The idea of maintaining such institutions as permanent features of society was beyond his comprehension. Their historical records indicate they have never experienced a period lasting more than 30 years without engaging in significant military conflicts. Dr. Rindal continued, her empathic organs now displaying the deep purple patterns associated with existential dread. When they do experience periods of relative peace, their military leaders become concerned about what they term readiness degradation and begin planning exercises to maintain combat effectiveness. The implications were staggering. Every other species in the galaxy viewed peace as the natural state of civilization, with warfare being an aberration to be avoided whenever possible. The humans seemed to view warfare as a natural state, with peace being a temporary condition that required active management to prevent their military capabilities from declining. Analysis of their current mobilization suggests they are conducting what they call readiness verification, Dr. Rindal explained, displaying intercepted communications from human military commands. Their commanders have determined that their forces have not been tested in large-scale operations for several months and are concerned that combat effectiveness may have deteriorated. Admiral Kethvar felt his species' natural fear responses activating as he contemplated warriors who were concerned about being insufficiently prepared for battles that did not exist. They are mobilizing hundreds of thousands of ships because they are worried about being out of practice? Worse, Dr. Rindal replied, accessing another data stream that showed human training scenarios in war games. Their exercises are designed to simulate threats that exceed anything in their historical experience. They are preparing to fight enemies more powerful than any they have ever encountered, using tactics and strategies developed for conflicts that have never occurred. The holographic display showed human military simulations that depicted alien invasions, interdimensional conflicts, and scenarios involving technological threats that were pure speculation. What was most disturbing was the level of detail and preparation that went into planning for hypothetical enemies. They have developed comprehensive battle plans for fighting silicon-based life forms, energy beings, hive minds, machine intelligences, and species with technological capabilities far exceeding their own, Dr. Rindal continued, her voice becoming increasingly strained. These are not abstract theoretical exercises. They are detailed operational plans with resource allocations, tactical doctrine, and strategic objectives. Admiral Kethvar realized with growing horror that the humans had been preparing to fight creatures very much like the members of the Galactic Council without ever knowing such creatures existed. Their war games and training scenarios had inadvertently prepared them for exactly the type of conflict that would result from contact with galactic civilization. Threat assessment of their combat readiness? He asked, though he suspected the answer would be devastating. Based on analysis of their training standards and performance metrics, Dr. Rindal replied, consulting data that made her empathic organs cycle through colors that had no equivalence in her species' normal emotional spectrum. Human military forces appear to maintain combat effectiveness levels that exceed wartime readiness standards for most galactic species. What they consider peacetime training would be classified as intensive combat preparation by our military doctrine. The laboratory's environmental systems struggled to process the stress chemicals being released by both officers as they contemplated the implications. The humans were not simply a powerful military force. They were a species that had achieved technological and tactical superiority while maintaining psychological and cultural attitudes that treated warfare as a natural science. Cultural prediction models? Admiral Kethvar asked, dreading the response. If current mobilization patterns continue, the humans will likely expand their training exercises beyond their home system within the next 6 months, Dr. Rindal reported, her empathic organs now displaying patterns that indicated she was experiencing emotional states that had no names in galactic languages. They appear to be following a cultural imperative that demands they test their capabilities against increasingly challenging scenarios, and if they detect our monitoring stations during these expanded exercises. Dr. Rindal manipulated the display to show psychological profiles of human military leaders throughout their history. What appeared were individuals who had consistently responded to unknown challenges by escalating their preparations and increasing their aggressive capabilities, rather than seeking diplomatic solutions. Based on historical behavior patterns, discovery of our monitoring efforts would likely be interpreted as confirmation that their preparations are justified, she replied quietly. They would probably accelerate their mobilization and begin developing countermeasures for threats they do not yet understand. Admiral Kethvar contemplated the nightmare scenario of human military forces that were already overprepared for galactic-level conflicts, deciding they needed to prepare even more thoroughly. The monitoring station suddenly felt very small and very vulnerable. "Recommendation, Doctor? We need to inform the Council immediately," Dr. Rindal said, her empathic organs displaying patterns that indicated she was experiencing multiple simultaneous emotional crises. "The humans are not mobilizing because they have detected threats. They are mobilizing because not being ready for threats they cannot imagine is psychologically intolerable to them. And Admiral, they are about to finish their preparations." The absolute emergency session of the full Galactic Council convened for the first time in over 800 years, with representatives from all 47 member species gathered in the Great Assembly Chamber on Nexus Prime. The massive hall, designed to accommodate the diverse physiological requirements of dozens of different life forms, hummed with translation devices, environmental support systems, and security protocols that had never been tested under such extreme stress conditions. Chancellor Mordak materialized at the central podium, her ethereal form flickering with energy patterns that had not been observed in her species for over 2 millennia. Around the chamber, representatives displayed every conceivable form of anxiety response their evolutionary paths had developed. The crystalline hierarchy resonated with harmonic frequencies that indicated species-wide panic, while the collective consciousness species had actually fragmented into multiple competing thought processes. For the first time in recorded history, we face a situation that challenges the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic civilization has been built, Chancellor Mordak announced, her voice carrying through the chamber's advanced acoustic systems to reach species that communicated through vibration, electromagnetic fields, and quantum entanglement. "The species we have designated as humans represents a form of intelligent life that operates according to principles we do not understand and cannot predict." The central holographic system activated, displaying the Sol system and the massive fleet movements that had been observed over the past week. What appeared in the chamber was beyond the comprehension of most assembled representatives. Human ships moved in formations that numbered in the millions, conducting exercises that consumed more resources than most member species possessed in their entire military budgets. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward to deliver the military briefing, his massive frame trembling slightly as he accessed data files that had driven 3 different AI analysis systems into recursive logic loops trying to process the implications. "Current human fleet strength is estimated at 12 million vessels of various classes," he announced, his voice carrying across the chamber like a death sentence. "This represents an increase of over 3,000% from our initial estimate 6 months ago. More disturbing is the fact that their industrial capacity appears to be accelerating rather than reaching maximum output." Gasps, chirps, harmonic resonances, and electromagnetic bursts of alarm filled the chamber as representatives struggled to comprehend numbers that exceeded their collective military capabilities by several orders of magnitude. Representative Zorthak of the Mining Consortium activated his species' emergency communication protocols, causing bioluminescent displays to flicker across his carapace. 12 million ships requires resource consumption that exceeds the total mining output of our 17 core systems. How are they sustaining such production levels? Analysis of their industrial infrastructure suggests they have converted their entire civilization to military production. Admiral Kethvar replied, displaying images captured by long-range reconnaissance drones. Their planet's surface now features manufacturing facilities that operate continuously, producing war materials at rates we previously thought impossible. The holographic display zoomed in on Earth, revealing a world that had been transformed into something resembling a massive military-industrial complex. Factories, shipyards, training facilities, and resource processing centers covered every available surface, while orbital construction platforms assembled vessels at a pace that defied conventional understanding of manufacturing limitations. More concerning, Admiral Kethvar continued, is the fact that this transformation appears to have occurred voluntarily. Our cultural analysis teams report no evidence of forced conscription, resource rationing, or social unrest. The human population seems to have embraced total war preparation as a normal state of existence. Ambassador Velkron of the Peaceful Assembly, whose species had evolved beyond physical conflict over 50,000 years ago, attempted to process this information through philosophical frameworks that had no provisions for such behavior. Perhaps they are responding to threats we cannot detect. Species-wide mobilization typically occurs only in response to existential dangers. Dr. Rindahl's analysis appeared on the chamber's secondary displays, showing the psychological profiles and cultural assessments that had been compiled over weeks of intensive study. What the representatives saw challenged their understanding of how intelligent life could develop. The humans are not responding to external threats. Dr. Rindahl reported through remote communication links from the monitoring station. They are preparing for conflicts that exist only in their imagination. Their military leaders have concluded that the universe is inherently dangerous and that adequate preparation requires the ability to defeat any conceivable enemy. The chamber erupted in confusion as dozens of species attempted to communicate their disbelief through incompatible sensory modalities. The translation systems overloaded trying to process simultaneous expressions of shock in languages that had evolved completely different concepts of reality. They are preparing to fight enemies they have never encountered, using strategies developed for threats that do not exist, with equipment designed to counter technologies they have never observed. Dr. Rindahl continued, her report cutting through the chaos with its quiet certainty. From their perspective, the fact that they have never faced such challenges proves they need to prepare more thoroughly. Supreme Tactician Morgoth of the Warcast, whose species had been responsible for maintaining galactic military standards for 6 centuries, attempted to analyze human strategic doctrine through conventional military frameworks. What emerged was a pattern of behavior that violated every principle of rational conflict management. Their training scenarios include battles against opponents with superior technology, overwhelming numerical advantages and capabilities that exceed known physics, Morgoth reported, his battle-scarred form displaying the stress patterns that indicated complete tactical confusion. They have developed countermeasures for weapons that do not exist and strategies for defeating enemies that are mathematically impossible. Yet their success rates in these exercises, Chancellor Mordak asked, though her flickering form suggested she already suspected the answer would be devastating. 93%, Morgoth replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute disbelief. They consistently achieve victory conditions in scenarios designed to be unwinnable. Their tactical flexibility and strategic innovation appear to operate according to principles that transcend conventional military logic. The implications struck the chamber like a physical force. The humans had not simply built a massive military force. They had created a civilization-wide machine designed to overcome any possible opposition through superior preparation, tactical innovation, and sheer determination. Time estimates for their expansion beyond the Sol system? Chancellor Mordak asked, her form beginning to flicker. With the energy patterns associated with species-wide evacuation, protocols Admiral Kethvar consulted. Projections that had been calculated and recalculated by the galaxy's most advanced strategic planning systems. Based on current mobilization rates and observed expansion patterns, human forces will begin exploratory operations beyond their home system within 30 days. Conservative estimates suggest they will achieve full galactic presence within 2 years. Diplomatic options? Representative Kulash of the Merchant Guild asked desperately, her species' economic analysis systems producing probability calculations that indicated total market collapse under human influence. Unknown, Dr. Rindahl replied from her monitoring station. Human diplomatic history shows they are capable of both cooperation and conquest, often simultaneously. Their decision-making processes appear to be based on factors we do not understand, following logic patterns that resist analysis. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives contemplated the end of galactic civilization as they knew it. For thousands of years, the Council had maintained peace through carefully balanced power structures, economic interdependence, and diplomatic protocols that assumed all intelligent species would behave according to rational principles. Recommendations? Chancellor Mordak asked, though her tone indicated she suspected there might not be any viable options remaining. Supreme Tactician Morgoth activated his species' ancient war protocols for the first time in 600 years. We have 4 choices. Surrender immediately and hope they are benevolent conquerors. Evacuate the core systems and hope they ignore us. Unite our forces and attempt to achieve a defensive victory that delays total defeat, or attempt to establish communication and pray they view us as potential allies rather than obstacles to overcome. Success probability assessments? Chancellor Mordek demanded. Surrender unknown outcome depends entirely on human psychology we do not understand. Evacuation. Temporary at best, they will eventually expand to any territory we occupy. Military resistance. Less than 1% chance of achieving even limited defensive success. Diplomatic contact. Impossible to calculate without understanding human motivations, and Dectheatives sat in stunned silence. First contact came not through diplomatic channels or formal communication protocols, but through what human military records would later classify as a routine deep space reconnaissance patrol. Commander Sarah Chen of the UTAF Intrepid, leading a squadron of 6 ships on what their mission parameters described as extended sensor mapping of local stellar neighborhood, encountered the Galactic Council's monitoring station Omega-7 at precisely 1427 Universal Time on what would become known throughout the galaxy as Contact Day. The monitoring station's crew had been tracking the human patrol for 3 days, watching in fascinated terror as the small formation conducted scanning operations that revealed technological capabilities far exceeding their worst projections. The human ships moved through space using propulsion systems that generated no detectable emissions, communicated through channels that bypassed every known method of signal interception, and conducted sensor sweeps that mapped stellar phenomena with precision that exceeded the Council's most advanced scientific instruments. Admiral Kethavar stood in the station's command center, surrounded by displays showing the approaching human vessels, while every member of his multinational crew struggled to maintain professional composure in the face of first contact with beings whose military capabilities had been the subject of months of increasingly alarming intelligence reports. "Sir, the human formation has altered course," reported sensor operator Veltar, her bioluminescent patches cycling through patterns that indicated she was approaching complete nervous system overload. "They are moving directly toward our position." "Have we been detected?" Admiral Kethavar asked, though the question seemed increasingly irrelevant as the human ships approached with the confidence of beings who had never encountered anything they could not handle. "Unknown, sir. Their scanning methods operate on principles we do not understand. It is possible they have been aware of our presence for considerably longer than we have been tracking them." The main display showed the human ships growing larger as they closed the distance to the monitoring station. What the assembled officers could observe was technology that moved with purpose and precision, suggesting crew capabilities that operated on levels beyond conventional training and preparation. "Incoming communication signal," announced Communications Officer Zatevak, his voice carrying undertones of panic. "The signal is being transmitted on frequencies we use for emergency broadcasts, using communication protocols that are classified at the highest levels of galactic security." Admiral Kethavar felt his species' natural fear responses activate as he realized the humans were not simply making contact. They were demonstrating that they already understood galactic communication systems better than the beings who had developed them. "Put it through," he ordered, preparing himself for first contact with creatures whose psychology and intentions remained completely unknown. The chamber's communication systems activated, and suddenly the command center was filled with a voice that spoke in perfect galactic standard, with inflections and linguistic patterns that suggested the speaker had been studying galactic languages for considerably longer than the monitoring period. "Galactic Council vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Terran Exploration Fleet. We are aware that you have been observing our activities for approximately 6 months, 14 days, and 7 hours. We would like to request permission to dock with your station for diplomatic consultation." The silence that followed was broken only by the environmental systems working overtime to process the stress chemicals being released by multiple species, simultaneously experiencing first contact with beings who had been watching them watch humanity. "How?" Admiral Kethavar began, then stopped as he realized the question was too complex to formulate properly. How had they detected the monitoring station? How had they learned galactic languages? How had they calculated the exact duration of the surveillance operation? How had they developed diplomatic protocols for situations that had never occurred in galactic history? Admiral Kethvar, I presume, Commander Chen's voice continued, answering questions that had not been asked while demonstrating knowledge that should have been impossible to obtain. Our intelligence analysis suggests you are the commanding officer of this facility. We have been monitoring your communications and have prepared briefing materials that we believe will address most of your primary concerns about human intentions and capabilities. The Admiral realized with growing amazement that the humans had been conducting counter-surveillance operations while allowing themselves to be observed, studying galactic civilization while pretending to be unaware of its existence. The level of strategic planning and tactical patience this suggested was beyond anything in his military experience. Permission granted for docking procedures, Admiral Kethvar replied, though he suspected the humans would have boarded the station regardless of his response. We will prepare diplomatic reception protocols. Thank you, Admiral. Please be advised that our diplomatic team includes individuals with specialized training in xenopsychology, comparative military doctrine, and galactic political systems. We have prepared presentation materials that we believe will facilitate productive discussions regarding future human-galactic relationships. The communication ended, leaving the station's crew to contemplate the implications of first contact with beings who had arrived prepared for diplomatic negotiations with civilizations they had supposedly never encountered. Sir, Veltar reported, her bioluminescent patterns now displaying colors that had no names in her species' emotional vocabulary. The human ships are docking using mechanical interfaces that are perfectly compatible with our station specifications. They appear to have manufactured docking equipment specifically designed for galactic standard configurations. Admiral Kethvar watched through observation ports as human vessels attached themselves to the monitoring station with the precision of beings who had practiced the procedure extensively. The docking maneuvers revealed ship designs that incorporated features obviously intended for interaction with galactic technology, suggesting the humans had been preparing for this contact for far longer than anyone had realized. Security protocols? Asked Chief Security Officer Morville, though his tone suggested he understood that conventional security measures would be meaningless against beings who had already demonstrated such comprehensive knowledge of galactic systems. Standard diplomatic reception, Admiral Kethvar replied, realizing that there were no protocols for receiving visitors who had been secretly studying galactic civilization while being secretly studied by galactic civilization. And prepare emergency communications to Council headquarters. They need to know that first contact has occurred, and that everything we thought we knew about human capabilities was dramatically underestimated. The station's internal sensors detected human personnel moving through the docking tubes with equipment that registered as advanced diplomatic and scientific instruments. What was most disturbing was the fact that the equipment generated sensor signatures that suggested technology designed specifically for communication with the species present on the monitoring station. Sir, reported Dr. Rindal from her xenobiology laboratory, preliminary scans of the human diplomatic team indicate they have brought cultural specialists trained in the psychological and social patterns of every major galactic species. They appear to have prepared for diplomatic negotiations with civilizations they officially never knew existed. Admiral Kethvar contemplated the approaching first contact meeting with beings who had turned strategic preparation into an art form, so advanced that they had prepared for diplomatic negotiations with unknown alien civilizations as a routine contingency. The humans had not simply been ready for galactic contact. They had been ready for galactic contact to occur in exactly the manner it was occurring. Estimated time until they reached the diplomatic reception area? He asked. Approximately 4 minutes, sir. And Admiral, their diplomatic team leader is requesting permission to begin presentations on human technological capabilities, cultural objectives, and proposed frameworks for interspecies cooperation. They have apparently prepared comprehensive briefing materials for this exact scenario. The Admiral realized that the humans had not simply made contact with galactic civilization. They had made contact with galactic civilization according to plans that had been developed in advance for contingencies that should have been impossible to anticipate. Inform Commander Chen that we are prepared to receive their diplomatic presentation, he replied, wondering if the humans had also prepared contingency plans for the contingency plans they were about to present. Sir, she says they anticipated that response, and have already prepared their materials accordingly. Admiral Kethavar understood with sudden clarity that first contact was proceeding exactly as the humans had planned, even though no one else in the galaxy had planned for it at all. The diplomatic reception aboard monitoring station Omega-7 lasted 14 hours and fundamentally altered every assumption galactic civilization had developed about the nature of intelligence, military capability, and interspecies relations. Commander Sarah Chen and her team of specialists delivered presentations that demonstrated not only comprehensive knowledge of galactic politics, technology, and culture, but also strategic planning capabilities that had prepared solutions for problems that had not yet been identified. Admiral Kethavar sat across from the human, diplomatic team in the station's largest conference facility, surrounded by holographic displays that showed information the humans had prepared about galactic civilization alongside information about human civilization that the Council had been desperately trying to obtain for months. What he was learning challenged everything he thought he understood about strategic planning and diplomatic preparation. Our initial intelligence gathering began approximately 18 months ago, Commander Chen explained, manipulating holographic displays that showed human reconnaissance operations conducted with such subtlety that galactic sensor networks had never detected them. We identified 47 distinct civilizations organized under a governmental structure we have designated as the Galactic Council, with technological capabilities averaging approximately 2,000 years behind current human development. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's xenopsychology specialist, activated additional displays showing psychological profiles of major galactic species that exceeded the detail and accuracy of the Council's own self-assessments. Our analysis indicates that galactic civilization developed along evolutionary paths that prioritized cooperation, stability, and conflict avoidance. This has resulted in technological and military capabilities that are highly advanced but not optimized for rapid adaptation or asymmetric warfare. Admiral Kethavar realized the humans had not simply studied galactic civilization, they had analyzed it with the thoroughness of military planners preparing for potential conflict while simultaneously developing diplomatic strategies for potential cooperation. Your mobilization activities, he began, struggling to formulate questions about military preparations that exceeded his ability to comprehend. Our intelligence suggested you were preparing for threats that did not exist. Commander Chen's expression suggested amusement mixed with respect for the quality of galactic intelligence gathering. Admiral, our mobilization was conducted in response to the discovery of galactic civilization. Our strategic planning protocols require preparation for 3 scenarios when encountering unknown civilizations: hostile contact, neutral contact, and cooperative contact. Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, identified as the team's military doctrine specialist, activated displays showing human strategic planning that had prepared for every conceivable outcome of galactic contact. The force levels you observed represented minimum preparations for defensive scenarios. Our planners determined that adequate preparation for unknown contact required the ability to defend human territory against opposition with superior numbers, technology, or both. Defensive scenarios? Admiral Kethavar asked, his mandibles clicking as he processed the implications. Your force estimates suggest capability levels that exceed our combined military capacity by several orders of magnitude. Correct. Colonel Rodriguez replied with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing routine planning parameters. Our doctrine assumes that any civilization capable of galactic organization possesses military capabilities that could threaten human territory if diplomatic solutions prove impossible. Adequate defensive preparation requires the ability to achieve strategic objectives against opposition that may significantly exceed our initial intelligence estimates. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's technological integration specialist, presented analyses showing how human technology had been developed specifically to interact with galactic systems while maintaining significant performance advantages. Our research and development programs incorporated contingency planning for contact with civilizations using technological principles different from our own. Human equipment is designed to interface with galactic technology while maintaining operational superiority in all critical categories. Admiral, Kethavar studied displays showing human ships equipped with communication systems designed for galactic protocols, docking mechanisms compatible with Council station specifications, and weapon systems that could interface with galactic defensive networks while maintaining the ability to overcome them. The level of advanced planning was beyond anything in his experience. "How long have you been preparing for this contact?" he asked, though he suspected the answer would be as disturbing as everything else about human strategic capabilities. Formal preparation began when our deep space monitoring systems detected galactic civilization. Approximately 26 months ago, Commander Chen replied, displaying timelines that showed human preparations proceeding with the efficiency of a civilization that had turned contingency planning into a fundamental cultural practice. However, our general preparation for unknown contact scenarios has been ongoing for approximately 3 centuries. 3 centuries? Admiral Kethvar repeated, his voice carrying the weight of absolute disbelief. Dr. Tanaka activated historical displays showing human strategic planning dating back hundreds of years. Human strategic doctrine is based on the assumption that the universe contains threats and opportunities that have not yet been identified. Our military and diplomatic institutions maintain continuous preparation for scenarios that may occur decades or centuries in the future. The Admiral realized he was seeing evidence of a civilization that had developed strategic thinking so far in advance that they had been preparing for galactic contact since before most current council members had achieved space travel. "Your intentions toward galactic civilization?" he asked, the question carrying the weight of decisions that would affect 47 species and trillions of lives. Commander, Chen activated a comprehensive presentation showing human proposals for integration with galactic civilization, including economic cooperation frameworks, technological exchange programs, joint scientific initiatives, and military partnership protocols. "Humans prefer cooperative relationships when possible," she announced, displaying detailed plans for peaceful coexistence that had obviously been prepared with the same thoroughness as military contingencies. "We have developed integration strategies that we believe will benefit both human and galactic development while maintaining stability and security for all parties." However, Colonel Rodriguez added, activating additional displays that showed alternative scenarios. "Our planning includes protocols for situations where cooperation proves impossible. Human doctrine requires preparation for all conceivable outcomes, including those we hope to avoid." Admiral Kethvar studied proposals that offered galactic civilization partnership with beings whose technological and military capabilities exceeded their worst fears, while simultaneously being reminded that refusal of partnership might result in contact with those same capabilities under considerably less favorable circumstances. "Council response timeframe?" Commander Chen asked, displaying schedules that showed human planning proceeding according to timelines that had obviously been calculated in advance. "Unknown," Admiral Kethvar replied honestly. "The Council has never faced decisions involving contact with civilizations possessing superior capabilities. Our diplomatic protocols were designed for interactions between roughly equivalent powers. We anticipated that possibility," Dr. Vasquez announced, activating displays showing human analysis of galactic decision-making processes alongside recommendations for modifying Council procedures to accommodate unprecedented circumstances. "We have prepared advisory materials that may assist Council deliberations, including analysis of decision-making, frameworks that have proven effective for civilizations facing technological disparities." The Admiral realized the humans had not simply prepared for contact with galactic civilization. They had prepared to help galactic civilization prepare for contact with humans. The level of comprehensive planning suggested strategic thinking that operated on scales beyond conventional comprehension. "Recommended next steps?" he asked, understanding that human planning had almost certainly included detailed protocols for managing the immediate aftermath of first contact. "We suggest a 30-day period for Council deliberations, during which human representatives will remain available for consultation and additional information sharing," Commander Chen replied, displaying schedules that showed human diplomatic and military activities planned around galactic decision-making timeframes. We have prepared materials that may assist Council analysis of integration scenarios, including economic impact assessments, technological compatibility studies, and security arrangement options. Admiral Kethavar contemplated returning to the Council with proposals from beings who had prepared more thoroughly for galactic contact than galactic civilization had prepared for contact with them. The humans had not simply made contact, they had made contact according to procedures DSIG. Admiral Shirei